So, for anybody who doesn't know our backstory of us living in a motorhome in 2000 and probably 2014, Kev decided that he'd got more years behind him than he had in front of him, and we'd love travel. We started going on holidays and doing like 7 days in Spain, then we'd do 10 days and it'd go to 14 days. And then I think we did 3 weeks. Our first long stint was 3 weeks in Florida. And to be honest, I shit myself. I thought, 3 weeks? How am I going to do it? But loved it. So we that got our love for America, but then we started hiring cars and travelling around America. Our son Scott, he was never interested. Once he got to 16, as long as he'd got the house to himself, he was quite happy to have parties at home. Our daughter, she's like me. She's like, if whatever you're paying, I'm coming. So she came with us, and we did a lot of travelling around America. We'd go to America for 3 weeks, and we would literally do one coast and just drive around it or up into the mountains. We've done a hell of a lot of America. So then that got us wanting to do more. We still did the odd package holiday in between, but not very many. I think our first one, stepping out of our comfort zone, was Vietnam, and we literally went for 3 weeks, booked 2 nights in a hostel the first night we got there, and literally winged it from there. But Kev would wake up and I would wake up and Kev would have said, oh, we're going to Hoi An tomorrow, I've booked some motorbikes, they're coming to collect us in the morning. Like, what? Yeah, it really was. Kev's mum used to call us piss potical, which I think translates as impulsive, not very organised, does things on a whim. So yeah, that's us. So that was a main holiday of our backpacking, but that was many years ago. Anyway, I digress. 2014, Kev decided he had enough. He used to have his own business, telecommunications, and had a business partner. And I told him he was just going to walk away from it. And I said, no, sell it. Sell your share, because it was a good business that got a good reputation. So he did sell it, but his partner couldn't afford to pay him outright. He said he would pay him monthly. So Kev started doing subcontracting. Rather than being a director, he was an actual worker. But he still enjoyed it because he didn't have the hassle of coming home, doing the books, because he used to work all day and then come home and do the books for the wages and purchases and sales. But I used to work for him. I was his secretary. But yeah, not for long. Wasn't taking his shit at work and at home. He'd say to me, don't do that. I'm like, don't you dare tell me off. He used to be my boss when we first met, and I had to leave because there was no way I was taking any bollockings off him at work and then coming home and being all nice. No, not a chance. Not a chance. So I handed my notice in and flew the nest, as such, the work nest. But 2016, we decided to go to Cuba. So we backpacked around Cuba for a month. That was that was an eye-opener, was that one, 2016. There was no internet. You had to go into like a bank to buy an internet card. You couldn't book anything online. You literally had to go to the bus station to book a bus to get to the next place. When you got to the next place, people stood there with like little cards, rooms to rent. It was bonkers. I didn't enjoy Cuba because I'm a foodie, and the food there was not the greatest. In fact, it was probably the worst cuisine we've ever had. So when we see Cuban restaurants over here, we're like, what the hell do they sell? Because the pizzas were just like a little round piece of dough with tomato ketchup on and a sprinkling of cheese, and it was not the nicest. I didn't actually look at what my face did then, but I have got one of those faces that if my mouth doesn't say it, which it normally does, my face will say it. Many people say, you didn't like that, did you? And I'm like, how do you know? Like, your face. Oh, okay. Anyway, so we did, from Cuba, we flew to Mexico City, and then we backpacked around Mexico City for a month. Now in Cuba we met a couple called Andy and Net, and they had no home. They'd sold up everything, and they house sit through the summer months, which now they're doing a hell of a lot more of, and not a lot of travelling. But so we got chatting to them on a bus because he was a Leeds United fan, and Kev's obviously Leeds United, or he was. That's his hometown, so he was home and away supporter. Then when we went on to Mexico, the difference in the cuisine from Cuba to Mexico, we went a bit silly, and after the first day, the pair of us ended up knitting our chickers, as they say. It was highly spiced, very, very different to Cuba, but we loved it. We did enjoy the Mexican food, and we flew into Mexico City, and then we just went backpacking around, staying in hostels, and we were welcomed by the younger ones because you could see the faces as we'd walk in, and they'd be like, oh my god, yeah, they're a bit old to be coming in here. And then when we told them the countries that we'd been to, and you know, we'd hired camper vans in Iceland, and we'd gone around in a camper van, and we'd backpacked around Patagonia, and they were like, wow, can't believe you've done that. So we got on really well, and they ended up asking us if we wanted to go to a nightclub with them. We're like, no, that's really not our scene. But it was nice to be welcomed. But in Mexico we met another couple, Sandra and Steve, and they had done the same thing. They'd sold up and were travelling. So my mind was ticking over, thinking, okay, you know, you can do it. Do I? Anyway, we got back and we put the house on the market. Kev was gobsmacked because he said, look, we can't do it. We can't afford to rent the house, buy a motorhome and go, we need to sell the house. Excuse him, wow. I had a little burp then. So classy. Yeah, we couldn't afford to buy a motorhome if we didn't sell the house. Unfortunately, the house sold in November. That's not the unfortunate thing, but in the December my mum passed away, and she was in a retirement home, and she'd had a stroke, and then she started getting dementia. But luckily she'd got £50,000 from the sale of her house, so me and my brother got 25 each, which bought our first and only motorhome. So I think we moved out of the house in the February. We locked the door. I'd literally sold everything, the house, the furniture. We'd downsized our clothes. I walked out of the house with a Tupperware box with knives, forks and spoons in, my good cutlery. I'd bought some nice plates and spoons, melamine plates for the motorhome, and as I walked out, instead of having that, oh my god, what have I done, it was like, yes, this is the first day of the rest of our lives, and it was such a freeing feeling. You just felt like you were on holiday, a permanent holiday. And I think our first night we stayed at the retirement home where my mum had lived and passed away, but they said we could stay in the car park, so we did that. The following day, Kev was reversing the motorhome out and reversed it into a tree branch. Oh, honestly, talk about dateless. He reversed it and he realised he was stuck somewhere, so he was going backwards and forwards, and I'm like, for fuck's sake, stop. The branch was coming through the bathroom wall. So we had to get our son out, and he brought a fibre kit out and filled it in, and then we ended up, a friend's got a printing business, so we got a huge sign on the side of the motorhome saying, we travel not to escape life, but for life not to escape us. And that was our mantra. We want, no way were we letting life escape us. We wanted to see and do as much as we could before anything happened, which with hindsight, it's we made the right decision. When Kev had his own business, he had a guy working for him who was in his 40s. He didn't have the best diet. He ate a lot of crap. and he'd never been abroad. He'd got 5 kids, and they got a job in Paris. So he was so excited to go because he'd never been abroad. And he went out to buy an alarm clock to take to Paris so they could get up. And he had a heart attack and died in the street on the way back. And we're like, wow, you just never know what's going to happen in life. You never know what curveball it's going to throw you. So that made us sit and think. My dad died at 61. Wanted to go to Australia, never got there. And he retired at 60 so that he could do a bit more travelling, but never got to do it. So it was just a case of sod it, let's go. So by this time we'd got the motorhome, but we still had a car. So we left the motorhome in the retirement home car park, went to a garage, sold the car. They drove us back in our car to the motorhome and drove off again. We are piss-potical. And then we went over to France. Well, we had our first weekend in Wales, actually, in the Brecon Beacons, and our son, he was like, what the hell, why have you sold the house? Because we were we were a close family, but we'd have a lot of parties at our house, we'd have Christmas at our house, we'd have barbecues, and our son would invite his friends. I mean, when we did this, our son was an adult and had his own home, and our daughter had left home, and she was living with a guy in Cardiff who was then to become her husband. But the son wasn't impressed that we were doing it. He thought we were bonkers to live in a motorhome, which a lot of our friends did. It was because we were stepping out of the norm. It's not normal, in inverted commas, to escape the rat race, to live a different life. We knew that we weren't loaded with no savings, but we knew we had the equity from the house that we could survive on. And Kev said, if I get 10 years out of this, I will be happy. And luckily, we've managed to keep going, and we're now nearly 11 years into it. But it didn't feel hard at first. It was hard going over to France and not having a clue how to set up a motorhome. We had no idea what grey waste was, what black waste was, or how to work the water, how to put the hookup in. It was bonkers. But when our daughter came, the first time she stayed with us, she said she came on the Friday night after she'd finished work, and by the Monday she said she didn't want to go home. She could see why we'd chosen that life. But our daughter's like us, she loves to travel. She's, climbed Tube Cal, she's done Everest Base Camp. She enjoys that type of thing. Our son, total different kettle of fish. He likes to go to Benidorm. Even now, he's 38 now, and he still loves to go to Benidorm and party and drink. And he's met a girl, and she's lovely. She's calmed him down a hell of a lot. So hopefully 38 he might start to settle down. But our daughter ended up buying a camper van, but that didn't work out because our granddaughter Phoebe didn't like it. It was too enclosed. She needed to get out. She'd got a dog, an Airedale Terrier. It was just too small, too cramped. One liked it, the other one didn't. So she jacked that in. But she still loves the travelling, the camping. She does like the outdoors. So we just hit France after probably about a week after we bought the motorhome, and we loved life. We stayed on. Didn't stay on any campsites. We were doing it as cheaply as we could because we didn't have the money. We couldn't eat steak every night. I did shopping lists that would last 3 days because our fridge was only tiny. It was a 10-year-old motorhome. So I'd go and buy reduced things, and I'd make meals. I'd just buy what we needed to survive on for a few days before I sort of went out shopping again. It's weird how you adapt your eating ways. I think Kev's got autistic traits, there's no doubt about it. He'd deny it, but he has. And I've definitely got ADHD traits. but he'd eat certain things, like you couldn't have a roast dinner on a Friday when we had the house, because that's just not the thing. Fridays and Saturdays were tasty tea, so it had to be a curry or a Chinese or steak. Sundays were for roast dinners. When we got to the motorhome, he didn't care. He really didn't care. I think it was just a switch that had turned on in his brain, and we had whatever we had. So we were living off things like bachelor's pasta and sauce with bits of chicken thrown into it and mushrooms to bulk it out. But we were enjoying life. We weren't rich, but we were rich on life. It was great just being able to park up, and if we didn't like it, we moved on. It was literally, home was where we parked it, and if we didn't like the home or we didn't like our neighbours, we moved. Simple as. It was very freeing. It took a lot of courage to do it, but didn't regret a thing of it. But we had some good times in the motorhome. Really enjoyed it, and I do miss it. We've not had it now for about 3.5 years. Change my scenery. I'm sat in my little camping chair outside the car. Then there's not as many people can see me. Quite self-conscious. I might be quite loud and brash. So yeah, we soon got used to a different way in the motorhome. We only ever did France, Spain and Portugal in it, but we loved it. We stayed on cider farms, we stayed at cider castles, trying to do it as cheaply as possible. We got a gas system fit so that we didn't have to buy gas bottles, and we could just go to petrol stations and fill up the gas. And then I'd got solar panels on the roof so that we could charge the phones, we could charge a laptop, we could watch TV, and the gas would that would filter to the fridge, the shower, the water, the heating. So we loved it, did love it. But then we got a bit Euro'd out. We didn't want to go to Italy. Kev didn't fancy driving, and he did miss not being able to look at the scenery as he was driving, because he'd be like this with the wheel, and he'd go, oh, look at that over there, and you'd be all over the road. So yeah, he did miss that. So it became a thing of we'd leave the motorhome at home, and then go off backpacking. I shall save the next bit for the next video. I hope I've not bored you. If you've got any questions, put them below. If you've liked it, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe. It's free. Thank you.